Hello students, welcome back. I hope you have watched the previous video on attention. If not, check the description box for the link to the video. Today we'll continue with the rest of the chapter focusing on learning. Learning. What is learning? You might think of learning in terms of what you need to do before an upcoming exam or acquiring new skills like dancing or cycling, but it is only a small segment of vast learning processes which encompasses all areas of life, including school, learning various skills, learning about places and people, and many more. According to psychologists, learning can be defined as a relatively permanent change in the behavior that occurs due to the experience or practice. This definition has three important parts. Let us look at that. 1. Learning is a change in behavior. There must be pertinent change in behavior for us to call it learning. It can be good or bad. Second point, it is a change that takes place through practice or experience. Changes due to growth or maturation are not learning. So when a baby learns to walk, that is not learning. That is part of maturation that happens innately. That means anything that happens naturally and that is part of growth and development of the human being will not be part of learning. But if a child has to be taught to learn a cycle through practice, then it is a part of learning and not maturation. Because you need to teach the child again and again how to cycle without falling down. Third point, before it can be called learning, the change must be relatively permanent. It must be lasting for a long time. This point is really important. This learning should be lasting for at least days, months, or years. Anything that lasts for a few minutes cannot be counted as learning. It has to be permanent in nature. So, if you have learned to write at your first standard, you still know how to write, that is called as learning. Moving on to the processes of learning. Learning is a complex process. There are many processes of learning. Some of the processes of learning are learning by classical conditioning. Learning by classical conditioning was explained for the first time by Russian physiologist Ivan Pavlov in 1928 through the experiment on the dog. You need to remember the name of Ivan Pavlov for your exam, as this is very important in the field of psychology. So Pavlov, he inserted a tube surgically in the dog's salivary gland so that he could measure the amount of salivation. You would have observed that when you give dogs food to eat, they start salivating. That is, their mouth starts watering and you can actually see the saliva coming down their tongue. So that is what Ivan Pavlov wanted to measure. Now let's see how he did that. He then presented the sound of the bell and food one after the other several times and measured how much the dog salivated. So, whenever Ivan Pavlov wanted to give the dog food, he made it a point to ring the bell first and then he would give the food. This used to happen one after the other several times, and each time he measured how much the dog salivated. After several trials, the dog started salivating to the sound of the bell even when the food was not given. So sometimes Ivan Pavlov would only ring the bell and not give the food, but still he noticed that the dog used to salivate. So based on this finding, Pavlov gave a theory called as the classical conditioning theory of learning. In our day-to-day life, we learn many things by classical conditioning. For example, when a child is given an injection for the first time, he starts crying due to the pain. But soon he realizes that whenever he goes to the doctor or to the hospital, he gets this injection. And soon, when it happens again and again, there's a connection that is framed between the doctor and the injection. And the next time, without even going to the doctor to get an injection, the thought of going to the doctor only, the child will start crying. So, this is a typical example of classical conditioning. Let us go over classical conditioning once again with the help of this slide. So here I have written food. Now food is a natural stimulus that invokes a response. When you have your favorite food in front of you, naturally your mouth will start watering. So that is a natural stimulus. A bell. Will you salivate when a bell is given to you? No, right? Because bell is not tasty. We cannot eat it. So it is unnatural. So you will not be salivating for the bell. What is salivation? Salivation is a response when you get your tasty food. So, in the experiment that Pavlov has done, he first presented the bell to the dog and then the food. So then the dog understood that whenever Pavlov will give food to him, he will first ring the bell. Like how we have in school, before your short break, the school will ring the bell, and then you know that it's time for your break. So that is what Pavlov did to the dog as well. So next time when the bell only rings, the dog will start salivating, was what Pavlov came to know. So this is what is called as classical conditioning. So similarly, even when we are in school, when the bell rings, we feel hungry. That is the entire thing that has happened with classical conditioning. So the bell is enough for us to start salivating. I hope now this is clear. The next process of learning is learning by operant conditioning. Operant conditioning was put forward by American psychologist Burgess Frederick Skinner. He performed an experiment in which a rat was put in a special box that contained a lever. If the rat pressed the lever, he was given food. If you look at the picture closely, you will be able to find where the lever and the food dispenser are kept. So, only when the rat would press the lever, the food would be given to the rat. Gradually, the rat learned that to press the lever to get the food. Here, the rat is learning to connect his behavior of pressing the lever with receiving the food. So now the rat is able to understand that only when he presses the lever, he will get food. So that association has been made in the rat's mind. According to Skinner, certain behaviors may be learned to gain positive consequences, which are also called as reinforcements. If you do something good, your parents reward you. So that is what is called as reinforcements. Similarly, he also demonstrated that certain behaviors may be learned to avoid negative consequences, which is called as punishments. You do bad, you get punished. The next process is given by Tallman and he talks about cognitive maps. Now let's look at that. Just when Skinner and Pavlov were talking about connections and consequences of behavior, Edward Tolman demonstrated that though rats in his experiments were not given any food, they still learned about the different pathways in the maze. That means rats created maps in the mind just for the sake of it. His experiment demonstrated that learning may take place in the mind using mental processes, what is called as cognitive processes now. So basically, Tallman he put the rats in a maze, like how it's seen in the picture, in the same way, and and in the maze somewhere food was kept. So the rats had to learn where exactly this cheese is kept for them to eat. So how they came to the cheese again and again in different trials by making a map in their mind is what Tolman proposed. So the rat was given the food somewhere in the maze. So the rat had to find this food in the maze. The rat was not given food each and every time it was able to go in the right direction. So this is what Tolman is telling, that although the food was given as a goal of completing the maze, it was not given on every time it went on the right direction. It was not a reinforcement. So Tolman said that although there was no reinforcement, the rats were able to learn the way to reach the food. So this is what Tolman had proposed. Tolman called this process as latent learning. It's not given in your textbook, but this is just additional information that you would require if you're going to study psychology for your graduation as well. Now, moving on to learning by assimilation and accommodation. Assimilation and accommodation was given by Jean Piaget. You need to learn all these names as very important. He explained that we learn many things by assimilation and accommodation. Jean Piaget is of the opinion that on the basis of new experiences or new information, we keep refining the existing concepts that we have. This is called as assimilation. So, for example, a child sees a four-legged animal for the first time. The child also knows that his pet dog is called as doggy. So now the child will think that the both of them look similar. They are four-legged animal with a tail, and will recognize this stray dog as also doggy. So that's what is called as assimilation. Accommodation is, now the child sees a four-legged animal with a tail again. The child will think that it's like the pet animal and will call it as doggy. But this time the child is corrected by his mother and its mother says that no, this is not a dog, it's a cow, because it is big. It's not like the dog. It has different. It's in a different color, and so on. So that now the child knows the difference between the dog and the cow. The next process is learning by observation. This was given by Albert Bandura. He said that we learn many things by observing someone's behavior and then reproducing it. So we just imitate. We learn by observing and imitating. So many of our skills like eating, walking, writing are all learned by observing others. We observe and imitate not only the movements of the body, but also certain ways of thinking, evaluating, judging, decision making. So that's how we learn from each other, and most of us in our family would sometimes think alike. This is all because of observational learning. So here we complete learning. If you have any doubts, reach out to me via mail or join my Telegram group and you can ask me doubts over there. If any further clarification is required, please do ask me. Thank you. If you like the video, please like, share and subscribe. If you don't like it, please give me suggestions to improve, and you can also dislike the video.